I discovered my parents had secretly combined my wedding with my sister's 5th anniversary celebration into one massive event. The venue coordinator showed me a contract with my forged signature for $86,000, double the original budget. Patricia announced they thought it would be magical to celebrate both daughters together, while Brielle acted completely surprised, but clearly knew. Tyler stood frozen as hundreds of Brielle's friends filled what was supposed to be my intimate ceremony space. The magnitude of their betrayal hit me as I walked through what should have been my dream wedding venue. Every single detail had been changed without my knowledge or consent. The elegant ivory and blush color scheme I'd spent months planning was replaced with deep burgundy and gold, Brielle's favorite colors from her original wedding 5 years ago. Coco, honey, doesn't this look absolutely stunning? My mother, Patricia, rushed toward me, her arms spread wide as if presenting a magnificent surprise. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, and she wore the expensive navy dress she'd bought specifically for my wedding day. We thought combining your special day with Brielle's anniversary would create such a beautiful family celebration. I stared at the reception tables, each one adorned with elaborate centerpieces that cost at least $300 each. These weren't the simple mason jar arrangements Tyler and I had chosen to stay within our $15,000 budget. These were towering crystal structures with imported orchids that probably cost more than our entire original floral budget combined. Mom, what is this? Where are the sunflowers I ordered? Where's the rustic barn setup we discussed? My voice cracked as I recognized none of the decorations we'd carefully selected together during those weekend planning sessions. Tyler appeared beside me, his usually calm demeanor showing cracks of confusion and growing anger. His charcoal gray suit looked out of place among the formal black tie atmosphere that had somehow materialized overnight. Coco, did you approve changing the menu? The catering manager just asked me about the lobster course and wine pairings we supposedly ordered. Lobster course. I turned to face the venue coordinator, a professionally dressed woman named Jennifer, who was clutching a thick folder of documents. We specifically chose the chicken and vegetarian options to keep costs reasonable. Jennifer's face flushed with obvious embarrassment as she opened her folder. According to these contracts, the menu was upgraded to include premium seafood options, an extended cocktail hour with top-shelf liquors, and a dessert bar in addition to the wedding cake. The changes were approved 3 weeks ago. My hands trembled as I reached for the papers. There in black ink was my signature on documents I'd never seen before. The itemized charges made my stomach lurch. Premium bar service for 200 guests instead of our planned 75. Upgraded linens at $45 per table instead of the $15 option we'd selected. Enhanced lighting packages, additional floral arrangements, and upgraded photography services I'd never requested. This isn't my handwriting, I whispered, comparing the signatures to my driver's license. The forgery was sophisticated but not perfect. The letter O in Coco was slightly different from how I naturally wrote it. Sweetheart, you're being dramatic. Patricia's voice took on that condescending tone I'd heard throughout my childhood whenever I questioned anything. We simply wanted to make sure both of our daughters had the celebration they deserved. Brielle's been married for 5 years, and you know how hard she and Derek have been working. They deserve something special. But this isn't what Tyler and I wanted, I protested, gesturing at the opulent setup surrounding us. We planned an intimate celebration with our closest friends and family. This looks like a corporate gala. That's when I noticed the guest seating arrangement. Tables were labeled not with our carefully crafted list of college friends, work colleagues, and Tyler's extended family, but with names I barely recognized. Derek's business associates, Brielle's sorority sisters from college, neighbors from my parents' subdivision that Tyler and I had never even met. "Where's my friend Sarah? Where are Tyler's groomsmen seated?" I frantically searched the seating chart for familiar names. Tyler pulled out his phone, his jaw clenched with barely contained frustration. "I need to call Marcus. He was supposed to fly in from Seattle yesterday, but when I texted him about final details, he said he never received proper information about the rehearsal dinner or timing changes." Jennifer cleared her throat nervously. "There were some adjustments made to the guest list. The client expressed concern about space limitations and requested we prioritize certain attendees." "The client," I demanded. "I'm the client. Tyler and I are paying for this wedding." "Actually," Jennifer's voice dropped to an uncomfortable whisper, "according to our records, the financial responsibility was transferred to include anniversary celebration costs. The contract shows combined billing under your name for both events." My vision blurred as the reality crashed over me. Not only had they hijacked my wedding, but they'd also stuck me with the bill for Brielle's anniversary party. Every upgrade, every addition, every expensive detail I'd never approved was now my financial responsibility. Tyler's phone buzzed with a text message. His expression darkened as he read it. "Marcus says he got a call yesterday saying the wedding was postponed indefinitely. He's still at the airport in Seattle, confused about whether he should even come." "Who called him?" I demanded. "The message came from someone claiming to be your wedding coordinator, saying there were family complications and all out-of-town guests should wait for further instructions." Patricia shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my direct gaze. "We thought it would be easier to handle the guest management ourselves. You've been so stressed with work lately, and we didn't want to burden you with all those details." The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. They deliberately excluded Tyler's friends and family while filling the venue with people who were there to celebrate Brielle and Derek. My wedding had been turned into their anniversary party, complete with my name on all the financial obligations. Tyler grabbed my hand, his grip firm and reassuring despite his obvious anger. "Coco, we need to talk. Right now." The venue's business office felt smaller than a closet as Jennifer spread contract after contract across the polished conference table. Each document bore my name, my address, and what appeared to be my signature, yet I'd never seen a single page before this moment. The total cost breakdown includes the venue rental, catering for 200 guests, premium bar service, enhanced floral arrangements, upgraded photography package, live string quartet, and anniversary celebration add-ons. Jennifer explained, her voice carefully, professional despite the obvious tension in the room. "The final amount is $86,475. Tyler's sharp intake of breath was audible across the small room. "We'd budgeted $15,000 total for our entire wedding. The number Jennifer just quoted was more than my entire annual salary as a marketing coordinator." "This is impossible," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We never approved these charges. We can't afford this." Jennifer opened another folder, this one containing credit applications and financial documents. "According to these records, your credit history and employment information were used to secure vendor financing. The venue required a 50% deposit, which was processed through a payment plan using your personal credit profile." My stomach dropped as I recognized my social security number and employment details listed on papers I'd never completed. Someone used my personal information without my permission. This is identity theft. The applications were submitted by Patricia Hartwell, listed as your authorized representative and wedding coordinator. She provided extensive documentation proving her authority to make financial arrangements on your behalf. Tyler leaned forward, his software engineer mind immediately grasping the implications. "What kind of documentation?" Coco never signed any power of attorney or authorization forms. Jennifer shuffled through more papers, clearly uncomfortable with the questions we were asking. There are signed documents here indicating family financial assistance and shared responsibility for wedding expenses. Everything appears to be legally documented. "Let me see those," Tyler demanded, his protective instincts fully activated. The documents were sophisticated forgeries. My signature appeared on forms authorizing my parents to make financial decisions related to wedding planning. The dates went back 3 months, during the period when I was traveling frequently for work and trusting my parents to handle vendor communications. "My daughter earns excellent money in marketing." Patricia's voice came from behind us as she entered the business office without knocking. "She can absolutely handle these expenses. She's being unnecessarily dramatic about the cost." "Mom, I make $42,000 a year. This bill is twice my annual salary before taxes." I held up the financial documents, my hands shaking with a combination of anger and panic. "How did you expect me to pay for this? You and Tyler both have good careers," Patricia replied dismissively. "Tyler works in technology, which everyone knows pays very well. Combined, you can easily afford to give your family a proper celebration." Tyler's face flushed red with anger. "Mrs. Hartwell, I'm a junior software developer. I make $55,000 a year. Between us, Coco and I can barely afford the apartment we're renting, let alone an $86,000 wedding we never planned." "Well, perhaps you should have considered your financial limitations before deciding to get married," Patricia snapped back. "Families make sacrifices for important events." "What sacrifices are you making?" I demanded. "Where's Brielle's contribution to this anniversary celebration you're throwing for her?" Patricia's expression shifted, her defensive anger giving way to something that looked almost like panic. "Brielle and Derek have their own financial obligations. Derek's real estate career has been challenging lately, and they're trying to save for a house." "So instead you're forcing us to pay for their party?" Tyler's voice rose with disbelief. "This is absolutely insane." Jennifer cleared her throat nervously. "Perhaps we should contact our legal department about the contract disputes. There are procedures for handling situations where financial responsibility is questioned." "Legal department." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Are you saying I could be sued if I don't pay this?" "The contracts are legally binding documents with your signature and personal information. From our perspective, you're the responsible party regardless of any family disagreements about planning decisions." Tyler pulled out his phone and started typing rapidly. "I'm calling my Uncle David. He's a lawyer in Portland. We need legal advice immediately." While Tyler made his phone call, I confronted my mother directly. "How could you do this to me? How could you forge my signature and destroy my credit without telling me?" Patricia's composure finally cracked, and I saw something desperate in her eyes. "You don't understand the pressures we're under. Brielle needs this celebration. Her marriage has been struggling, and Derek has been talking about separation. We thought a beautiful anniversary party might help them remember why they fell in love. So, you decided to sacrifice my financial future to save Brielle's marriage. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain I'd ever experienced. You're willing to destroy my credit and put Tyler and me in debt for years just so Brielle can have a party." "It's not just a party," Patricia protested. "It's family. It's what families do for each other." Tyler finished his phone call and returned to the conversation with grim determination. "Uncle David says this is fraud, plain and simple. Identity theft and forgery are serious criminal charges. He's driving down from Portland tonight to help us sort this out." Jennifer looked increasingly uncomfortable as the legal implications became clear. "Perhaps there's a way to modify the contracts or split the financial responsibility between the parties involved. The only parties involved should be the people who actually planned this event," Tyler stated firmly. "Coco and I had nothing to do with any of these decisions." "But the wedding is tomorrow," Jennifer pointed out. All the vendors are scheduled, the food is ordered, the flowers are arranged. Regardless of who planned what, someone needs to take responsibility for the financial obligations. I looked around the small office, feeling trapped by contracts I'd never signed and obligations I'd never agreed to accept. My wedding day, which should have been the happiest day of my life, had become a financial nightmare that could take years to resolve. "Mom," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the chaos in my heart. "You have 24 hours to figure out how you're going to pay for this party you planned. Because I'm not signing anything else, and I'm not accepting responsibility for your decisions." Patricia's face went pale as the reality of her situation finally hit her. "Coco, you can't be serious. Where would we get $86,000? "That's not my problem anymore," I replied, standing up from the conference table. "You created this mess without consulting Tyler or me. Now you get to solve it the same way." The hotel lobby buzzed with pre-wedding activity as Tyler and I sat in a corner booth trying to process the magnitude of our family's betrayal. My phone hadn't stopped ringing for the past 2 hours, but I'd let every call go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to hear more lies or manipulations. Tyler's laptop was open between us, displaying our actual wedding budget spreadsheet alongside the venue's inflated contract demands. The mathematical impossibility of our situation was stark and undeniable. "Look at this," Tyler said, pointing to his screen. "The photography package we originally chose was $1,200 for 6 hours of coverage. According to these new contracts, they've upgraded us to a premium package that costs $4,800 and includes engagement photos we never scheduled and anniversary portraits for Brielle and Derek." "Anniversary portraits," I repeated numbly. They literally turned our wedding photographer into their personal anniversary photographer. That's when I heard Brielle's distinctive laugh echoing from the hotel restaurant. She was sitting at a table with Derek and 2 women I didn't recognize, all of them dressed in expensive cocktail attire, despite it being barely past noon. "There she is," I muttered, gathering my courage. "Time for some answers." Tyler closed his laptop and followed me toward their table. As we approached, I caught fragments of Brielle's conversation that made my blood run cold. "Honestly, it worked out perfectly. We get the anniversary celebration we've always wanted, and Mom handled all the financial arrangements. I told Derek we should send Coco a thank you gift for being so generous." "Generous?" I interrupted, causing all 4 people at the table to look up with startled expressions. Brielle's face immediately shifted into what Tyler and I had started calling her innocent sister expression. Wide eyes, slightly parted lips, and a carefully practiced look of surprise. "Coco, there you are. We've been looking everywhere for you. Isn't this exciting? Our celebration is going to be absolutely magical tomorrow." "Our celebration." I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. "Explain to me how my wedding became your anniversary party." Derek shifted uncomfortably in his chair, avoiding eye contact with both Tyler and me. His usually confident demeanor seemed strained, and I noticed dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. "Listen, Coco." Derek began hesitantly. "I want you to know this wasn't my idea. When Brielle first mentioned combining the events, I thought she was joking." Brielle shot him a warning look that could have frozen water. "No, Brielle. I'm tired of pretending this is normal." Derek turned to face me directly. "Your sister convinced your parents that we desperately needed an anniversary celebration to save our marriage. She told them that if we didn't have something spectacular to look forward to, I was going to file for divorce." Tyler's eyebrows shot up. "Were you planning to file for divorce?" Derek rubbed his temples with obvious exhaustion. "We've been having problems. Money problems, communication problems, trust problems. But a fancy party isn't going to solve any of that. I told Brielle we should invest in marriage counseling, not waste thousands of dollars on a celebration we can't afford. Thousands! I laughed bitterly. Try 86,000, and apparently I'm paying for all of it. The two women at the table, who I now realized were Brielle's sorority friends from college, exchanged uncomfortable glances and began gathering their purses. Maybe we should leave you family to talk privately, one of them said, clearly sensing the tension. Actually, stay, I said firmly. I want witnesses to this conversation. Brielle's mask of innocence was starting to slip, replaced by the manipulative expression I remembered from our teenage years. Coco, you're being incredibly selfish. Mom and Dad worked so hard to create something beautiful for both of us, and you're ruining it with your negativity. Selfish. Tyler's voice rose with disbelief. Your sister is being forced to pay for your anniversary party with money she doesn't have, using contracts she never signed, and she's the selfish one. She makes good money, Brielle replied dismissively, and Tyler has a technology job. You can afford to help family. Help family. I pulled out the venue contracts from my purse. This isn't helping family. This is financial fraud. Look at these signatures, Brielle. Look at them carefully and tell me you didn't know Mom was forging my name on legal documents. Brielle barely glanced at the papers before waving her hand dismissively. I don't know anything about contracts and signatures. I just know that Mom said everything was handled and that you'd agreed to make this a joint celebration. Derek leaned forward, his expression serious. Brielle, that's not what you told me 3 weeks ago. You said Coco specifically asked to combine the events because she wanted to honor our anniversary. I never said that. Brielle snapped, her composure finally cracking. You're misremembering. No, I'm not. Derek pulled out his phone and started scrolling through text messages. Here. You sent me a text on February 14th saying, and I quote, Coco loves us so much that she wants to share her special day with our anniversary. She's insisting we let Mom plan something incredible for all of us. Tyler and I read the text message over Derek's shoulder. The manipulation was clear and deliberate. Brielle had orchestrated this entire situation using our parents as intermediaries to avoid taking direct responsibility. You planned this, I said quietly, the full scope of the betrayal finally becoming clear. You manipulated Mom and Dad into hijacking my wedding so you could have the anniversary party you wanted without paying for it yourself. That's ridiculous, Brielle protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Is it? Tyler challenged. Because it seems pretty convenient that your marriage was allegedly in crisis right around the time Coco set her wedding date. And it's pretty convenient that your parents suddenly decided to combine events without consulting either of us. One of Brielle's friends, clearly uncomfortable with witnessing family drama, stood up from the table. Brielle, we're going to head back to our rooms. Call us later when things settle down. As her friends left, Brielle's defensive anger intensified. Fine. You want the truth. Derek and I have been struggling financially because his real estate commissions have been terrible this year. We couldn't afford the kind of anniversary celebration that would make our marriage feel special again. When I heard about your wedding plans, I thought it would be perfect to celebrate together. But you didn't ask me, I pointed out. You went behind my back and manipulated our parents into forcing this situation. Because I knew you'd say no, Brielle admitted. You've always been selfish about sharing attention. Even when we were kids, you never wanted to share birthday parties or family celebrations. Tyler's protective instincts kicked in fully. That's not sharing, Brielle. That's stealing. Coco didn't choose to share her wedding. You stole it from her and stuck her with the financial consequences. Derek stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I can't listen to this anymore. Brielle, we're going to marriage counseling when we get back from this disaster, or I'm filing for divorce. I won't be married to someone who destroys her own sister's life to get what she wants. Derek, don't be dramatic, Brielle called after him as he walked away from the table. Dramatic. Derek turned back, his voice carrying across the restaurant. Your sister's financial future is destroyed because you wanted a party. That's not dramatic. That's criminal. As Derek left the restaurant, I looked at my sister sitting alone at the table, surrounded by the remnants of her elaborate lunch with friends she'd invited to my wedding without asking. For the first time in my life, I saw her clearly, not as my older sister or my parents' golden child, but as a person who was willing to destroy others to get what she wanted. I'm not paying for your party, Brielle, I said quietly. I'm not accepting responsibility for contracts I never signed, and I'm not pretending this is normal family behavior. You'll ruin everything, Brielle said, her voice small and desperate. The venue is booked, the vendors are scheduled, all our friends are coming. You can't just cancel everything at the last minute. I'm not canceling anything, I replied, standing up from the table. You are. You and Mom and Dad are going to figure out how to pay for the party you planned, or you're going to explain to your friends why it's not happening. Tyler stood beside me, his hand finding mine with gentle support. We're done being manipulated, Brielle. Find another way to fix your marriage that doesn't involve destroying ours. As we walked away from the table, I heard Brielle's voice calling after us, but I didn't turn around. For the first time in my life, I was walking away from my family's manipulation instead of absorbing it and trying to make everyone else happy. The knock on our hotel room door came at 11:30 that evening, long after Tyler and I had given up trying to sleep. We'd spent the entire afternoon and evening making phone calls to vendors' family members, and Tyler's Uncle David trying to understand our legal options and plan our next moves. Who could that be? Tyler mumbled, checking the peephole before opening the door. Derek stood in the hallway, still wearing his dinner clothes, but looking completely disheveled. His hair was messed up, his tie was loose, and his eyes were red with exhaustion. I'm sorry to bother you so late, Derek said quietly, but I couldn't sleep. I keep thinking about this whole situation, and there's stuff you need to know. Stuff about your parents' finances that explains why this is happening. Tyler stepped aside to let Derek into our room. What kind of stuff? Derek sat heavily in the desk chair, running his hands through his hair. I work in real estate, right? Part of my job involves understanding people's financial situations when they're buying or selling homes. About 6 months ago, your parents asked me to help them understand their options for refinancing their house. Refinancing. I felt a chill run down my spine. Why would they need to refinance? They've lived in that house for 20 years. That's what I thought too, Derek continued. But when I looked at their financial documents, their situation was much worse than I'd realized. They've been borrowing against the house equity for years to cover expenses that their income couldn't handle. Tyler sat on the edge of the bed, his expression serious. What kind of expenses? Derek pulled out his phone and showed us a folder of financial documents. Your mom's event planning business has been losing money for the past 3 years. She's been using credit cards and home equity loans to keep it operating, thinking she could turn it around. Your dad's insurance brokerage has been struggling too because larger firms have been taking his clients. How much debt are we talking about? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Combined, they owe about $230,000 in various debts. Credit cards, business loans, home equity lines of credit, and personal loans from friends and family members. The number hit me like physical blow. $230,000. The house is worth about $350,000, but they owe almost all of that in mortgages and equity loans. They're basically financially underwater with no way to recover unless they sell the house and downsize significantly. Tyler processed this information with his analytical mind. So they're facing bankruptcy or foreclosure, and they saw Coco's wedding as an opportunity to generate income somehow. Worse than that, Derek said grimly. They see Coco as their retirement plan. Patricia told Brielle that since Coco has a good job and no children, she should be the one to take care of them financially as they get older. Take care of them financially. I felt sick to my stomach. I'm 28 years old. I can barely afford my own apartment. Derek nodded sadly. That's what I told Brielle, but she was convinced that you and Tyler could handle supporting 2 households if necessary. She said technology jobs pay enough to cover extended family expenses. Tyler's face flushed with anger. That's completely insane. I'm a junior developer making $55,000 a year. We're saving every penny to buy our own house someday. We can't support 4 people on our salaries. There's more, Derek continued reluctantly. The reason Brielle was so desperate for this anniversary celebration is that she's been borrowing money from your parents for years. Her credit cards are maxed out. Her car is financed at a horrible interest rate, and she owes your parents about $18,000 that she's never paid back. I stared at Derek in shock. $18,000 for what? Shopping, vacations, restaurant bills, spa treatments. Brielle has expensive taste, and my real estate income has been inconsistent. Instead of adjusting our lifestyle, she's been borrowing money and assuming your parents could afford to cover her expenses indefinitely. So, my parents have been enabling Brielle's overspending while going into massive debt themselves. The family dynamics were starting to make horrible sense. Derek nodded miserably. When your parents realized they couldn't keep lending Brielle money, she panicked. That's when she came up with the idea of combining your wedding with our anniversary celebration. She figured if they could convince you to pay for a big party, it would solve multiple problems at once. Tyler stood up and began pacing the small hotel room. Let me get this straight. Your parents are facing bankruptcy. Brielle owes them $18,000 she can't repay, and their solution is to fraud their way into making Coco pay for an $86,000 party. It gets worse, Derek said quietly. The anniversary celebration wasn't really for us. It was supposed to be a networking event for your mom's event planning business. She invited potential clients and vendors hoping to generate new business contacts and prove she could still organize high-end events. The betrayal went even deeper than I'd imagined. My wedding was turned into a business networking event for Mom's failing company. Brielle told me that Patricia specifically chose expensive vendors and elaborate decorations to showcase her event planning skills. The anniversary theme was just an excuse to justify the extravagant spending. Tyler stopped pacing and faced Derek directly. Why are you telling us this now? Why didn't you say something earlier when you knew Coco was being set up? Derek's shoulders sagged with guilt. Because I was desperate to save my marriage, and I thought maybe if Brielle got what she wanted, she'd stop being so angry and resentful all the time. I convinced myself that you and Coco could afford it, and that it might actually bring the family closer together. Instead of standing up to your wife when she was planning to defraud my fiancé, Tyler said coldly. Yeah, Derek admitted. Instead of being a decent human being, I went along with a plan to destroy someone else's financial future so my wife could have a party. I'm ashamed of myself, and I'm ashamed of my marriage. I sat in stunned silence, processing the full scope of my family's betrayal. They hadn't just hijacked my wedding. They'd planned to use it as a business event while sticking me with massive debt I couldn't afford. Everything about my relationship with my parents and sister had been built on lies and manipulation. Derek, I said finally, I need you to put all of this information in writing. Every financial detail, every conversation you remember, every plan they made. If Tyler and I are going to fight these fraudulent contracts, we need documentation of their real intentions. I'll do whatever I can to help, Derek promised. I should have stopped this weeks ago when I first realized what was happening. Tyler's phone buzzed with a text message from his Uncle David. Uncle David just landed in Portland. He's driving down here tonight and will meet us first thing in the morning to review all the legal documents. What should I do about tomorrow? Derek asked. Should I pretend everything is normal, or should I confront Patricia and Ronald about what I know? I looked at Tyler, drawing strength from his steady presence and unwavering support. You should decide what kind of man you want to be, Derek. The kind who enables fraud and financial abuse, or the kind who stands up for what's right. As Derek left our hotel room, I realized that my entire understanding of my family had been shattered in the course of a single day. The parents I'd trusted and respected were facing bankruptcy and had chosen to sacrifice my financial future rather than face the consequences of their poor decisions. The sister I'd always looked up to was a manipulative person who viewed me as a resource to be exploited rather than a family member to be loved. But I also realized something else. I had Tyler, who had stood beside me through every revelation and betrayal. I had his family who genuinely cared about my well-being. And I had my own strength, which I was finally learning to use. Tomorrow was supposed to be my wedding day. Instead, it was going to be the day I took control of my life and refused to be my family's victim any longer. Tyler's Uncle David arrived at our hotel at 6 a.m, carrying 2 large coffee cups and a briefcase filled with legal documents. He was a tall man with graying hair and the kind of calm confidence that comes from years of practicing law. I've spent the entire drive reviewing the information Derek provided, David said without preamble. This is a clear case of identity theft and fraud. The question is whether we want to pursue criminal charges or focus on civil remediation. What's the difference? I asked, grateful for the coffee and his straightforward approach. Criminal charges would involve the police and district attorney. Your parents could face jail time for forgery and identity theft. Civil remediation means we focus on getting you removed from financial responsibility and possibly recovering damages. Tyler sat beside me on the hotel bed, his laptop open to a document he'd been working on all night. I've been thinking about this differently. What if we don't focus on legal action at all? What if we just solve the problem ourselves? David raised an eyebrow. What kind of solution are you thinking about? My friend Marcus owns event venues in Seattle. We've been friends since college, and he's always told me if I ever needed anything, just ask. I called him at midnight last night. I stared at Tyler in surprise. You called Marcus. What did you tell him? Tyler's expression shifted to something I'd never seen before. Determination mixed with protective anger and absolute certainty about our path forward. I told him the truth, that your family has been manipulating and financially abusing you, and that they've destroyed your dream wedding to serve their own purposes. I asked if there was any way we could have a real wedding ceremony, the kind we actually planned, with people who genuinely care about us. David leaned forward with interest. What did Marcus say? He said yes. More than that, he said he's been planning weddings for 15 years, and he's never heard of anything as cruel as what your parents have done. He's offering us his best venue completely free of charge for any time we want tomorrow. I felt tears starting to form, but for the first time in 2 days, they weren't tears of despair. Tyler, we can't ask Marcus to donate his venue. That's thousands of dollars in lost revenue for him. He's not donating it, Tyler said with a smile. He's investing in justice. Marcus said when word gets out about what he did for us, it'll be the best marketing his business ever received. People love supporting vendors who stand up against family manipulation. David nodded approvingly. That's actually brilliant. Instead of fighting the fraudulent contracts, you simply walk away and create your own celebration. Your parents and sister become solely responsible for their own financial mess. But what about all the vendors at the original venue, the photographer, the florist, the catering? I was still thinking like someone who felt responsible for other people's poor decisions. Tyler opened his laptop and showed me a detailed plan he'd been working on. I called everyone. The photographer we originally hired for $1,200 is available for our morning ceremony. The simple florist we chose for our budget-friendly arrangements can deliver to Marcus's venue instead. The string duo we wanted for our intimate ceremony is available in the morning instead of the evening. What about food? David asked practically. Marcus has an in-house catering team. They're going to prepare exactly the menu we originally planned. Grilled chicken vegetarian pasta simple salad, and the small wedding cake we actually ordered for our 75 guests. I looked at the spreadsheet Tyler had created. All of our original vendors, all of our original plans relocated to a venue that would cost us nothing except the actual services we'd contracted for. The total cost would be exactly what we'd budgeted months ago. What about guests? I asked. Most people think the wedding is tomorrow evening at the other venue. Tyler's smile widened. I spent the night calling everyone who actually matters to us. Your college roommate Sarah is flying in from Chicago. My groomsmen from Seattle are driving down together. My parents are coming, my aunt and uncle, your cousin Jennifer, who you actually like. Real people who care about us, not business contacts and social acquaintances. David reviewed Tyler's plan with professional admiration. This is perfect. You're not breaking any contracts because you never agreed to those contracts. You're not responsible for any debts because those debts were incurred without your consent. You simply proceed with your own plans while leaving your family to handle their own consequences. What happens to Patricia and Ronald and Brielle? I asked, still struggling to completely abandon my lifelong role as family caretaker. They face the natural consequences of their choices, David said firmly. They planned an expensive party they couldn't afford using your name and credit without permission. Now they need to solve their own problems. Tyler closed his laptop and looked at me seriously. Coco, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about our wedding. This is about the rest of our lives. If we don't establish boundaries now, if we don't make it clear that we won't accept financial abuse and manipulation, this behavior will continue forever. Tyler's right, David agreed. Enablers create monsters. Your parents and sister will continue this pattern of behavior until someone refuses to participate. I thought about Derek's revelation the night before. The massive debt, the years of enabling Brielle's overspending the plan to use me as their retirement fund. Tyler was absolutely right. This wasn't just about one wedding. This was about whether I was going to be a victim of family manipulation for the rest of my life. What time is the morning ceremony? I asked. Tyler's face lit up with relief and excitement. 10 in the morning. Marcus's venue is about an hour north of here in the mountains with a beautiful view of the valley. Exactly the kind of intimate natural setting we originally wanted before your parents turned everything into a formal corporate event. David gathered his legal documents and closed his briefcase. I'll be there as your legal witness, and I'll have paperwork ready to officially document your refusal of financial responsibility for the fraudulent contracts. If your parents want to pursue legal action against you, they'll have to prove you actually agreed to their terms. What should we tell Patricia and Ronald? I asked. Tyler's expression hardened with resolve. Nothing. We don't owe them explanations for refusing to participate in their fraud. They'll figure out what happened when we don't show up for their event. But they'll be furious. I protested, my old programming of trying to keep everyone happy still influencing my thoughts. Good, David said bluntly. Let them be furious. Let them face the consequences of their choices. Let them explain to Brielle's friends and Patricia's potential business clients why the event they can't afford is falling apart. I looked around the hotel room at the two men who were helping me reclaim my life. Tyler, who had spent the entire night creating a solution that would give us the wedding we actually wanted. David, who had driven through the night to provide legal protection and guidance. Real family isn't about blood relations or shared genetics. Real family is about people who support your best interests and stand by you during difficult times. Okay, I said quietly. Let's do it. Let's have our real wedding tomorrow morning with people who actually love us at a venue where we're welcome and appreciated. Tyler reached for my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. Are you ready to start our marriage as equal partners instead of victims of family manipulation? I've never been more ready for anything in my life. The morning sun filtered through tall pine trees as Tyler and I stood on the wooden deck of Marcus's mountain venue, surrounded by 35 people who had driven hours or flown across the country to celebrate our actual wedding. The air smelled like pine needles and fresh snow from the peaks visible in the distance. Marcus had transformed his rustic venue into exactly what Tyler and I had originally envisioned. Simple white chairs, arranged in a semicircle, mason jars filled with sunflowers, and baby's breath string lights hanging between the trees, and a small wooden arch decorated with eucalyptus and white roses. You look absolutely radiant, my college roommate Sarah whispered as she helped me adjust the simple ivory dress I'd bought off the rack for $200. It wasn't the elaborate designer gown my parents had pressured me to purchase, but it was exactly what I'd wanted from the beginning. Tyler stood at the altar wearing the charcoal gray suit he'd originally chosen, flanked by his 3 groomsmen who had driven all night from Seattle to be there. His face glowed with happiness and relief as he watched me walk down the aisle to acoustic guitar music played by his cousin Emma. Dearly beloved. Marcus began having obtained his efficient license specifically for our ceremony. We gather here this morning to witness the union of 2 people who have chosen love over manipulation, authenticity over appearances, and genuine relationships over family obligation. His words struck exactly the right tone for our unconventional situation. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a declaration of independence from toxic family dynamics. Tyler's vows were simple and heartfelt. Coco, yesterday, I watched you choose self-respect over family approval. You chose integrity over keeping the peace. You chose our future together over the guilt and manipulation that have controlled you for years. I promise to always support your strength, never enable anyone who tries to diminish you, and build a marriage based on honesty and mutual respect. My own vows came from a place deeper than I'd known existed. Tyler, when my own family was willing to sacrifice my financial future for their convenience, you stood beside me and helped me find my voice. You showed me what real partnership looks like. I promise to never lose the strength I've found, to always choose our family over outside manipulation, and to build a life with you based on the values we actually share. Marcus pronounced us married as the sun rose higher over the mountain peaks, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that no expensive venue could have replicated. Tyler's kiss was gentle and filled with promise for our future together. The reception was everything our original wedding was supposed to be. Tyler's mother, Linda, had spent the morning in Marcus's kitchen preparing simple, delicious food that people actually wanted to eat. His father, Robert, had brought his guitar and played acoustic songs that meant something to us personally. I want to make a toast, Sarah said, standing up with her glass of champagne as our small group gathered around 2 long wooden tables on the deck. I've known Coco since freshman year of college, and I've watched her spend 28 years trying to make other people happy at her own expense. Today, I watched her choose happiness over obligation. Tyler, you're getting an incredible woman who has finally learned to value herself. Tyler's best friend Jason stood next, his voice carrying clearly in the mountain air. Tyler called me at 2 a.m. yesterday explaining this whole situation with Coco's family. My first thought was that he should run as far as possible from that kind of drama. But then I realized something. He wasn't running from drama. He was running toward the woman he loves and helping her run toward freedom. That's the kind of partnership that lasts forever. Linda approached our table with tears in her eyes and a small wrapped gift. Coco, I want you to know that Robert and I have been married for 32 years. We've learned that the people who try to control your marriage decisions before you're even married will try to control your marriage decisions for the rest of your lives. What you and Tyler did today wasn't just about having a wedding. It was about establishing that your marriage belongs to you two alone. The gift was a small wooden box containing 2 matching keys. These are keys to our cabin in Colorado, Robert explained. We want you to know that you always have a place where you're welcome, where you're supported, and where nobody will try to manipulate or control you. As the afternoon progressed, I realized something profound. The people at our mountain wedding weren't there because they felt obligated, or because they wanted to network, or because they thought they should be there. They were there because they genuinely cared about Tyler and me as individuals and as a couple. Tyler's Aunt Rebecca pulled me aside as we were cutting our simple 2-tier cake. I hope you realize what you accomplished today. Not just the wedding, but the way you handled your family's manipulation. You showed incredible strength and wisdom. I don't feel strong, I admitted. I feel guilty for disappointing my parents and sister. Rebecca shook her head firmly. You didn't disappoint them. You refused to enable them. There's a massive difference. Disappointment is when someone expects reasonable behavior and doesn't receive it. Enablement is when someone expects unreasonable behavior and receives it anyway. As the sun began to set behind the mountain peaks, Tyler and I stood together on the deck watching our friends and Tyler's family clean up the remnants of our celebration. Marcus approached us with an envelope and a satisfied smile. This is for you, he said, handing Tyler the envelope. It's from Derek. He brought it by about an hour ago but didn't want to interrupt your celebration. Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter and a check for $5,000. The letter read, Coco and Tyler. I spent the morning at the venue where the original reception was supposed to happen. Patricia and Ronald showed up at 7 in the morning, expecting to start setting up for additional decorations. When the vendors demanded payment before proceeding, reality finally hit them. I watched your mother have a complete breakdown when she realized that none of the vendors would work without immediate payment, and that the financial responsibility really was going to fall on her and Ronald. Your father spent 2 hours on the phone with their accountant and attorney trying to figure out how to handle $86,000 in debt they can't pay. Brielle finally admitted to them that this was her idea from the beginning and that she never intended to contribute financially. I'm enclosing a check to cover your honeymoon as a small apology for my role in this mess. You two deserve happiness, and I'm sorry it took me so long to stand up for what was right. Derek. Tyler and I looked at each other in amazement. They're really going to have to pay for their own party, I said. And for the first time I felt no guilt about their situation. Or cancel it and explain to all their guests why they planned an event they couldn't afford, Tyler added. Marcus clapped Tyler on the shoulder. From a business perspective, what you two did today is exactly what I hope more people will do. You chose vendors who respected your vision and your budget. You prioritized genuine relationships over artificial appearances, and you refused to go into debt for other people's approval. As we prepared to leave for our honeymoon, which Tyler's parents had secretly upgraded using their airline miles, I realized that our mountain wedding had been infinitely more meaningful than any elaborate event could have been. We'd surrounded ourselves with people who supported our independence rather than our compliance. Mrs. Henderson. Tyler said, using my new married name as we walked to our car, how does it feel to be married to someone who will never ask you to sacrifice your integrity for family approval? It feels like freedom, I replied, and meant it completely. 3 weeks into our honeymoon in Costa Rica, Tyler's phone buzzed with a call from his Uncle David. We'd been deliberately avoiding social media and family communications, focusing on building our new marriage without outside interference. "You need to know what's happened since your wedding," David said without preamble. "The legal and financial consequences for your parents have been significant." We sat on the beach at sunset as David explained the complete collapse of my parents' elaborate scheme. The venue had demanded full payment before proceeding with the combined anniversary wedding reception. When Patricia and Ronald couldn't produce $86,000 on 24 hours' notice, the entire event was canceled. "What happened to all the guests?" I asked, feeling a mixture of curiosity and residual guilt. According to Derek, who's been keeping me informed, about half the guests showed up to the venue and found locked doors and a cancellation notice. The other half received frantic phone calls from Patricia trying to explain why the event wasn't happening. Tyler leaned closer to the phone. "What about the vendors? Are my parents still legally responsible for the contracts?" "That's where it gets interesting," David continued. When the venue's legal department investigated the contracts more thoroughly, they discovered multiple irregularities beyond just the forged signatures. Patricia had also inflated her income statements and provided false employment verification for both herself and Ronald. False employment verification. I felt my stomach drop. How much legal trouble are they in? The venue decided not to pursue criminal fraud charges, but they've blacklisted Patricia's event planning business from working with any of their partner vendors. Word has spread through the industry that she's unreliable and potentially dishonest. Tyler processed this information with his analytical mind. "So her business is effectively finished?" "Pretty much. But there's more." The financial investigation triggered by the venue situation led to other discoveries. The IRS is now auditing their personal and business taxes for the past 3 years. It turns out Patricia has been claiming business expenses for personal purchases, including some of the money she lent to Brielle. I sat in stunned silence as the full consequences became clear. My parents' attempt to solve their financial problems by manipulating me had instead accelerated their financial destruction. "What about Brielle and Derek?" Tyler asked. "Derek filed for divorce last week. He's also provided documentation to the IRS about Brielle's use of business funds for personal expenses. He's trying to protect himself legally from her financial decisions." The information hit me like waves. Everything my family had tried to avoid by manipulating me was now happening anyway, but worse than it would have been if they'd simply been honest from the beginning. "David," I said quietly, "do you think I should reach out to them? Offer to help somehow?" "Absolutely not," David replied firmly. "This is exactly what I was warning you about. You're feeling guilty for other people's consequences, which is precisely the dynamic that allowed them to manipulate you in the first place." Tyler took my hand, his touch grounding me in our new reality. "Coco, remember what happened when you tried to help them before. They used your willingness to help as an excuse to exploit you further. But they're my parents. I protested old programming still influencing my emotional responses. They're adults who made deliberate choices to commit fraud rather than face their financial reality honestly," David corrected. "You didn't create their problems, and you're not responsible for solving them." Over the following days, more information trickled in through Derek, who had become an unexpected ally in understanding the full scope of what had happened. Patricia and Ronald had been forced to sell their house and move into a small apartment. Patricia's event planning business was permanently closed. Ronald's insurance brokerage was struggling because clients had lost trust after hearing about the venue situation. Brielle had moved back in with our parents, unable to afford her own apartment after Derek filed for divorce. Her credit cards were maxed out, her car had been repossessed, and she was facing potential legal action from the IRS for misuse of business funds. The ironic thing, Derek told us during a phone call, is that if they'd simply asked for help honestly, they might have been able to work out a reasonable solution. Instead, their attempt to manipulate you has made everything infinitely worse. Tyler and I returned from our honeymoon to find our new apartment filled with wedding gifts from his family and our real friends. Cards congratulating us not just on our marriage, but on our courage in standing up to family manipulation. Marcus had framed a photo from our mountain wedding and included a note. This picture is hanging in my venue's office as an example of what real love looks like. You've already brought me 3 new clients who specifically requested the kind of authentic celebration Tyler and Coco had. 6 months later, Tyler and I received an unexpected letter from Patricia. It was the first communication from my family since our wedding day. Dear Coco and Tyler, it read, I'm writing to apologize for the way we treated you during your wedding planning. I've spent months in counseling trying to understand how I justified such manipulative behavior. I realize now that I was so afraid of losing everything that I was willing to sacrifice your trust and financial security to save myself. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm taking full responsibility for my choices. I'm also in financial counseling, learning to live within my means instead of borrowing from my children's futures. If you're ever willing to talk, I would welcome the chance to have an honest conversation about rebuilding trust. If not, I understand and respect your decision. Love, Mom. Tyler and I discussed the letter extensively before responding. We decided to meet Patricia for coffee with clear boundaries about what we were and weren't willing to discuss. The woman who met us at the coffee shop was different from the manipulative mother I'd known growing up. She looked older, tired, but also more genuine than I'd seen her in years. I want you to know, Patricia began, that everything Derek told you about our financial situation was true. We were facing bankruptcy, and instead of dealing with that honestly, we decided to make it your problem. That was wrong, and I'm deeply ashamed of it. What about Brielle? I asked. Has she acknowledged her role in this? Patricia's expression became sad but honest. Brielle is still angry that you didn't go along with the plan. She feels like you abandoned the family when we needed help. She's not ready to take responsibility for her part in what happened. Tyler leaned forward. Mrs. Hartwell, we appreciate your apology, but we need to be clear about something. We're not resuming any kind of relationship where we're expected to provide financial support or solve problems we didn't create. I understand, Patricia replied. I'm not asking for money or help. I'm asking if there's any possibility of rebuilding some kind of honest relationship where I treat you as adults instead of resources to be managed. Over the course of several months, Patricia and I slowly rebuilt a limited but genuine relationship. She attended counseling, regularly lived within her Social Security income, and never asked Tyler or me for money or favors. She also never pressured us to reconcile with Brielle or include her in our new family traditions. Ronald eventually apologized as well, though it took him longer to fully understand how his financial desperation had led to ethically terrible decisions. He started working part-time at a hardware store and seemed genuinely committed to living honestly. Brielle never apologized. According to Patricia, she continued to blame Tyler and me for the family's financial collapse, claiming we should have been more understanding of their situation. Some people learn from consequences, Tyler observed, and some people just get angry that consequences exist. 2 years after our mountain wedding, Tyler and I bought our first house. It was a modest starter home within our actual budget, purchased with money we'd saved honestly without going into debt. Marcus officiated the housewarming party. Derek brought his new girlfriend, and Tyler's family helped us move in. Patricia sent a congratulations card and a small gift, but she didn't ask to be involved in our house buying process or offer unsolicited advice about our financial decisions. She respected the boundaries we'd established and seemed genuinely happy for our success. "You know what I learned from all this?" I told Tyler as we sat on our new back porch watching the sunset over our small yard. "Family isn't about biology or shared history. Family is about people who support your best interests even when those interests conflict with their own wants. And marriage isn't about merging into each other's dysfunction," Tyler added. "It's about choosing to build something healthy together regardless of what either of our families of origin taught us was normal." As I reflected on our journey from manipulation to freedom, I realized the most important lesson wasn't about money or weddings or family drama. It was about recognizing my own worth and refusing to accept treatment that didn't honor that worth. The mountain wedding that started as an act of desperate rebellion had become the foundation of a marriage built on mutual respect, honest communication, and shared values. We'd learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for manipulative family members is to stop enabling their poor choices and let them face natural consequences. Our real wedding had given us more than a beautiful celebration. It had given us a template for making decisions based on our own values rather than other people's expectations. And that template had become the foundation for a genuinely happy life. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and protecting your own well-being? What would you have done if your family had manipulated your wedding day for their own benefit? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like this story if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more family stories about setting boundaries and choosing self-respect, and share this with anyone who might need encouragement to stand up to family manipulation. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that choosing yourself isn't selfish when other people are choosing to exploit you. You deserve relationships built on respect and genuine care, not guilt and obligation.